A while ago, I started painting my Stormcast Eternals in this red, sort of Custodes-like theme. A link to that video will be in the description. There is one model that I left out of that process though, partly because I wanted something fun for the end of it, and partly because it's a very expensive model and I really wanted to do it justice. And, as you may have guessed, it is the Stardrake. In this video I'm going to show you my approach to painting this model and share some tips that will hopefully make it easier for you to paint. Firstly though, I wanted to touch on why my videos are still coming out fairly slow at the moment. The main reason for that is the 2.0 version of my iOS app for miniature collecting, which helps you track your collection and where each model is in the painting process. It's also free to download and use. There's a lot of great new features in iOS 16 that I wanted to take advantage of, so I've rewritten a fair portion of the source code for Hobby Life, which has been a fairly big undertaking but has a lot of advantages. The new progress screen has all new graphs and themes. There are a number of new features. One of my favorites is the new gallery screen. You can pick from several different views to see all of the photos that you've stored in the app, and tapping on any of them will take you to your project so you can see all the details on that model. This update has taken up a lot of my free time, but it's now at a point where it's just about ready to go. I'm just waiting for the new iOS 16 to release on iPad, so when I put out the update, there won't be anyone who's logged out of downloading the app. So as soon as iOS 16 drops for iPad, it'll be ready to go. Thanks for listening to that update. Now let's talk about Stardrake. To start with, I used a thicker, more heavy-duty plastic glue for this project. I was a bit concerned the regular strength glue would not be able to hold the wings on. This definitely did the job. For sub-assemblies, I left the Dragon Rider off, this part of the base and the bow that goes in the back of the Dragon Rider seat. I think this worked pretty well. The wings were still a little bit in the way, but the benefit of being able to airbrush the wings as part of the whole model outweighed the negatives. For the airbrushing process, I decided to paint the smaller parts black and the dragon itself in a white. For all of my other units, I always started with black, and it's a good start if you're going to dry brush gold. But for the dragon itself, I wanted to build up colour by layering inks, so white is a far better starting point. Next, I forgot to hit record like I normally do, but what I did was start with a mix of white and yellow ink to take the edge off the intensity of the yellow, sprayed it from below and on the wings. Then I used a mix of red and purple ink, very little purple, only about 2 drops to about 20 red drops. Applied that mostly from top down. When there wasn't much ink left in the airbrush, I added some more yellow to blend the bottom and the top of the model and lighten any areas that felt too intense. Generally, you want this to be a bit brighter than you think you want it, otherwise it will be too dark after doing the washes. I followed this up with a matte varnish. This step is important so the inks don't reactivate when we do the wash. For the Dragon Rider, I'm not going to repeat the past. I have a whole video on how to paint this scheme. All I did was refer back to my list, which I made in the batch painting video, which I have linked below. It's super useful to keep a list of your painting techniques so that you know how to resume if you put an army on hold for several months, like I often do. For the base, I started with a very wet dry brush of grey, followed by a much drier dry brush of Screaming Skull, focusing mostly on the edges. For the plant, I slapped down some green for some reason, realised it looked dumb and went with Wildwood to cover it up. Then to finish it up, I sloshed on a ton of Agrax Earthshade and called it a day. Super simple, but also super effective. Here's how it looks dry. If you want to add some more highlights, then go for it, but remember where this is going. I don't want it to grab too much attention from the main attraction, which is the dragon that will be standing on top of it. So sharp highlights may be a little bit too much. Back on the dragon, I'm blocking in areas that are still white. For anything that is going to be gold, I'm using the same process as the humanoids by starting with a black base coat. If you are skilled with an airbrush and a piece of card, you may want to do this in the airbrushing stage, or just brush it on like I'm doing. While that dries, I've made some progress on the rider. I've applied some Screaming Skull and a downwards stroke on the seat, which should really sell the wood effect, once it is then coated in the Wildwood contrast paint. Now I'm going to do something which may be a bit controversial. I'm going to cover the entire dragon in a violet wash. This will take some time, but trust me, it's worth it. Just make sure you have varnished first, otherwise this will reactivate any inks. I haven't put a lot of effort into the underside of the dragon because, well, no one's ever going to really see it once it is on the base, but I think this will offer a nice contrast for the bits that you can see. Now I'm going to start work on the gold, using the same process I used for the gold on the character. Feel free to be a bit messy to add some texture. These armor plates are a lot bigger than the units, so the less uniform the layers of colour are, the better it will look. Don't forget the bits of metal on the wings in this process. Now that large areas are done, I can start working on the detail by painting the horns and teeth white, followed by a wash or contrast paint like Basilicanum Grey, then highlighting in Screaming Skull, which you may have worked out by now is my go-to colour for a warm white highlight. Now that I'm finished with the bottom of the model, I've glued the model to the base and started detailing the surface with texture paint. In this case I'm using a Vallejo brand. They have some really good texture paint and great value too. Comes in a pretty big tub. I used a rubber brush to apply texture paste as it makes it easy to move around and easy to clean afterwards. The main thing I want to be careful of in the texture paste is making sure that it covers any joins between the model and the base to make a good transition and look fairly seamless. To me, the ground felt kind of swampy, so I wanted to add some groundwater. Thematically, it also helps give reason to why the dragon is perched on the bricks, the ground below being a bit unstable. I used some AK Interactive puddles, which served me well when I did Yndrasta last year. It's a nice simple mixture that will dry overnight, no need to harden with UV. Once this is done, I use some green paint to dot the puddles and make it look like small lily pads. Added some tufts and it was pretty much done. So here is my completed Stormcast army. I had a lot of fun working on it, and the batch painting in the beginning definitely helped kickstart things off. Total cost of the army comes to just under $600 Australian, which I feel is pretty good considering the Star Drake alone was over $200. The rest of it made up with 2 separate Start Collecting boxes, half of the Dominion box, and a Stormstrike chariot, which I have a video for as well if you'd like to see how I painted that. When I say completed, I mostly mean completed for now. There's still some units I'd like to add to this army, however I also want to get back to my big backlog of 40k to paint. My Adeptus Sororitas, and I also have a collection of Drukhari that I need to paint. So I won't be buying any more Sigma for at least a little while, unless something really cool comes out. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel. Also be sure to check out Hobby Life, it's free on the iOS App Store, no strings attached, it's just something that I've made mostly because it's something I wanted for myself, but I also wanted to share it with viewers of the show. Version 2 will be available really soon, and anything that you've done in version 1 point whatever will just carry across. Alright, that's it for today, take care.